call the meeting to order at 7:04 p.m. And we have nothing to report out of closed session as was personnel issue. And now if we can go to roll call.
Councilmember Skillman.
Here.
Mayor Moore.
Here.
Vice Mayor Harvey.
Here.
Councilmember Landman.
Here.
It'd be noted for the record that Councilmember DeLasso is absent.
And if we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Barrett.
Good evening, Council. For the benefit of the audience and for our friends and families at home watching this podcast, my name is George Barrett. I'm a former Cotati City Councilman here in Cotati, and I would like to bring up this issue of the Pledge of Allegiance and remind the community and the Council that we almost lost the Pledge of Allegiance back in 2009. When I was on the City Council, Council Member Bob Coleman brought up the fact that he wanted to place on a future agenda the possibility of discussing and voting on removing the Pledge of Allegiance from these proceedings. Well, as I've said in the past, none of the people in the City Council were present that night for that meeting. And I wish you would have been there to object to Mr. Coleman's suggestion when we had the chance. I was adamantly against doing away with the Pledge of Allegiance in 2009. I said to Mr. Coleman across the dais that, in fact, they couldn't stop me from pledging my allegiance to the flag before or after the meeting or even outside, for that matter. They couldn't stop me. So whatever they wanted to do, if they had the votes to do it, they could do it. But more recently, in the last few weeks, Councilmember Mark Landman here has referred in these council meetings to some transcripts of that meeting, that council meeting in 2009. And I'd like to challenge Mr. Landman to provide those official transcripts, because surely they are official transcripts and nothing less than official transcripts, and surely they're not hearsay. But I asked for those transcripts at the last meeting and I didn't get them. I didn't get them emailed to me. We didn't get them provided to the public. And Mr. Landman won't produce those transcripts because they don't exist. And I'd like to ask Mr. Landman, tell the truth, Mark. I challenge you tonight to provide those official City of Cotati transcripts, basically trying to call me out to be a liar. I'd like you to present those to the public tonight, make a copy available, or apologize. So, are you going to do that tonight, Mr. Landman? You set those official transcripts out that don't exist? You a little nervous, are you? Am I yelling, Ms. Skillman? Am I yelling?
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Your time's up.
Thank you, sir.
Now I would like to move on to... Oh, absolutely. Councilman Landman.
You know, they say that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So I appreciate Mr. Barrett trying to copy my line about telling the truth, George. But the truth of the matter is, as I've said several times, it's on the internet, Mr. Barrett. You keep asking for these things. You encouraged me to go do my research. Mr. Jim Sweeney published this transcription because you challenged him. It's funny how the truth keeps coming around, kind of backing you in a corner, isn't it? So that's the simple fact of it. And you'll see if you look at his story, or anyone else who wishes to can see, that the reason that Mr. Sweeney had something to do is because of the City of Cotati, as you should remember, because I believe you briefly were a council member at the time, had just initiated recording podcasts. And, of course, they don't save those for all these years, which you should know as a council member, too. And for the record, while I'm trying to talk, I'm being distracted by Mr. Barrett seemingly having issues in the audience. I'm not sure what the problem is. But I wish he'd stop that so we could actually conduct the meeting without interruption. At any rate, that's the truth of the matter. And for anybody who doesn't believe me, take a look. You can ask yourself whether you believe Jim Sweeney's telling the truth or George Barrett. I know which one I trust more.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to comment on the Pledge of Allegiance? I will close the public comment on the Pledge of Allegiance again. And now we'll move on to approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve. And second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let the record reflect the 4-0. Thank you. And now we move on to housekeeping items. Ms. Taylor? Will you be so kind as to remind us of those?
Thank you, Mayor. For the benefit of
Certainly.
everyone in attendance, please observe the following. Silence electronic devices, including cell phones. Audience members are advised that the chamber and hallways carry sound, so please keep conversations to a minimum or conduct them outside the building. Photographs or video recordings using tripods or other means that would be distracting are to be taken only from the designated media area along the south wall of the chamber. Members of the public wishing to address the council are asked to complete a separate speaker card for each item. Speaker cards are located on the table inside the entrance to the chamber. Place the completed speaker card in the tray located by the city clerk, and when their name is announced, speakers should come forward to the podium and direct their comments to the city council.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Mr. Burrich? My hope is that you might bring something new to this dialogue.
Don't interrupt me, sir. And that's out of line. That's
I
against the
haven't
code of
given you the
conduct.
floor yet.
Please be quiet while I'm speaking. Will you start the clock over, ma'am?
Mr. Burrich, go forward.
For the benefit of the community, why are you no longer putting these rules, these housekeeping items, these rules, in print on the agenda like you did for years? The reason is, if I may surmise, is that you're embarrassed. You're embarrassed to spell them out. Why not list all the rules that govern your conduct during a city council meeting? That's what I would like to suggest. The council breaks basic rules of order, like as you saw the mayor do just now tonight when I had the floor. They break these rules of order and ethics all the time. Maybe we can review the code of conduct of the city council members. The overwhelming disruptions here at these meetings have been from city council members themselves. There has been a huge double standard over the years, and even the Community Voice newspaper won't report on it. For 3 years, the city and the city council have been dishonest, declaring these housekeeping rules that the city clerk herself apparently made up on her own without your approval. We've never gotten any comment that you had anything to do with these rules. This has wasted everyone's time and embarrassed these proceedings. Now, if you fail to verbally state, Mr. Mayor, that the speaker cards are purely optional at the beginning of the meeting at 7 o'clock, you have violated the Brown Act. Mr. Moore sometimes announces that these speaker cards are purely optional after he has a handful of them behind the dais, which is ridiculous. Now, let me read. I have a suggestion for you to place on the housekeeping items. Number 3 of the Cotati City Council Code of Conduct. Council members shall refrain from abusive conduct, personal charges, or verbal attacks upon the character and motives of other city council members, committee members, staff members, or the public. The professional and personal conduct of members of the city council must be above reproach and avoid even the appearance of impropriety. Mr. Moore, you owe me an apology for interrupting me tonight with your sarcastic, juvenile remarks. And it'll probably be a cold day in hell when I get an apology from you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make public comment regarding the housekeeping items? Seeing none, I will close the public comment. Now we'll move on to announcements. The City of Cotati has special open office hours on Monday evenings from 5 to 7 p.m. in a Community Development Department at City Hall as part of its Cotati Open for Business program. This program provides personalized assistance and information to developers, current Cotati business owners, and those interested in starting a new business within the city. The Roanoke Park Cotati Regional Library hosts events for all ages, including art exhibits, book clubs, and children's programs. All events are free and open to the public. For more information, call the library at 584-9121 or visit sonomalibrary.org. The Cotati Historical Society Museum is open regularly the second Tuesday of each month from 5 to 7, Saturdays from 1 to 4, and by appointment. For more information, call 794-0305. And citizens interested in receiving City of Cotati community alerts via text or email are encouraged to sign up at Nixle, NIXLE.com. Recreation programs have started. See the details on the web at cotaticity.org. We're going to move on to proclamations. We have a proclamation here. We do not have a representative from the organization here, so I'm not going to read the proclamation, but I will announce that we have a proclamation of the City of Cotati declaring March 7th through March 13th, 2016 to be Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Week in Cotati. Thank you. We do not have our honorary mayor here tonight, Mr. Zoe Yates, so we will move on past that particular item unless any of the council had any questions on that. And now we will move on to approval of the final agenda. Any changes, Mr. Obid?
No changes.
Thank you. So now we will go to citizens' business. Any member of the public wishing to speak to the council on any item listed on the consent calendar or any matters not listed on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the council is not allowed to consider issues or take action on any item not listed on the agenda during this period. Comments of any member of the public are normally restricted to a total of 3 minutes in length per person for matters not on the agenda, and a total of 3 minutes per person in length for items on the consent calendar. So I'll open up citizens' business. Ms. Alderman.
My first thing I like to say is you do break the rules. Those Rosenberg rules are meant to govern your behavior. And what you've done is you've done such things as make the citizen comments due the day before the agenda is out. And the last 2 of my written communications have not been published on the web agenda either. And that is totally wrong. I did it on the City Council one, I did it within 12 hours, and I did it actually before the Planning Commission, and they were not allowed to be published. And you've missed the whole point of the Rosenberg rules. They were to govern you guys' behavior. You disrespect us and disrespect citizens' input almost every time. The other thing I'm going to basically read is people think I have a negative attitude. Well, I'm going to read what the city has done to my family in the last 20 months. My family has been harassed by the neighbors for 4 months to keep me off the property, so I would not, the city allowed this, so I would not report environmental damage to state agencies. The city perpetuated false rumors spread by my ex-neighbors, such as I was mentally ill and that I was investigating the fire and explosions. The city had sole jurisdiction for the fire ruins in our property, but the city manager wrote that the city had no responsibility to our home or our family. The Cotati police failed to enforce our one-way restraining order against our ex-neighbors. The Cotati police failed to stop the neighbor from stalking me in his vehicle, saying following someone and laying in wait is not illegal. The neighbors harassed me so badly, my mother called the police, and the police officer lectured me. And then the wife next door took the officer's side, and less than 1 minute later, the police officers left without addressing the harassment. This is all on video. The city staff and the city police used the excuse of it being a dispute. It's hardly a dispute when one party doesn't say one word during the harassment, me, so that would have been seen as, so it would be seen as the pure harassment it was. The police would not come out for an obvious public safety hazard, and I had to call the CHP to take jurisdiction. The city allowed multiple power washing incidents into the sidewalk gutter of fire rooms with no consequences to the neighbors. Despite intervention from state level agencies and even the governor's office, this never changed the course of Cotati's actions. They make up laws as they go, no matter whom they harm.
Thank you. Mr. Burrich.
Mr. Moore, at the last council meeting, you said that you were looking forward to me bringing up your criminal record for the next 10 months. Well, until you get sober, sir, and get out of your denial, I think you can expect it to go much longer than 10 months. You need to come clean with the community that you're habitually driving drunk around this town and are often seen drunk in public and have come to these meetings, these proceedings in the past, clearly intoxicated. You keep calling me a liar about your drunkenness in public. If I am wrong and slandering you, sue me. Mr. Moore, you continue to pose a threat to this community by driving drunk with impunity. Had the voters in this town known the truth about your drunkenness and your criminal record, you would have never been elected. Why the community voice never reported on this in your convictions is a scandal in itself. It's all been a big bad cover-up. Let me get my email. Here is an email that was sent to me by a Cotati police officer, which reads, Mr. Barrich, John Moore is a drunk. I arrested him years ago for a DUI, and he got out of it, pleading out to a drunk in public. He is habitually extremely intoxicated around the downtown area and continues to drive drunk. I'm going to post this on the wall for the public to see. Now, this police officer, or this police chief rather, this one right here, testified under oath that the city council does not listen to George Barrich. Under oath. I think you people listen pretty good. But you're more effective at interrupting, mocking, and violating your code of ethics. Is the police chief wearing his body camera tonight? No. How many thousands of dollars did you spend on that? He won't wear one. To protect the city from these frivolous lawsuits that the mayor says are filed against the city. No, it's just the taxpayers' money. We don't have to use it wisely. And Mr. Deloso said that he was concerned about the homeless in Cotati freezing to death. The homeless freezing to death. What have you folks done about the homeless in Cotati this winter, this brutal winter? It's been 4 months since he brought that up and asked that to be put on the future agenda. You waiting for June, July? Now, Mr. Moore, Mr. Lamman, the last thing I want to
Thank you, Mr. Barrich. Time's up.
May I have another minute, sir?
No, you may not.
One more minute, please.
No.
Please, sir.
No. Why would I?
So could I make a brief comment?
Absolutely.
I'm just really wishing that over the 15 years of my legal experience that I was allowed to use emails as evidence. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to address the public comment, citizens' business? Seeing none, I will close citizens' business. Mr. Abid, do we have any written communications? No. Thank you. And do we have any direction on future agenda items?
Not tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Not tonight.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the consent calendar. Is there anyone wishing to address any of the items on the consent calendar? Seeing none, I will close public business.
Move to approve.
Public comment?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Let the record reflect a 4-0 vote. And public hearings, we have no items on that. Now we'll move on to the regular agenda. Item number 5. Craig?
Mayor, members of the council, Craig Scott, Public Works Director, City Engineer. Tonight's item is an accumulation of 3 years' worth of CDBG projects coming to fruition with the, before you tonight, the item is of awarding the construction contract for these 3 projects. The city, with me tonight is Rick Pedroncelli to help answer any questions during the discussion portion. He's with Mo Engineering, and they put the design together. Then also there's a handout that's available to the public and was available to you guys this afternoon. And these are the plans for the project. We'll be getting to those a little bit later. The city for over 30 years has participated in the CDBG project, which is a program which makes HUD money, Housing and Urban Development, federal money available to jurisdictions. And the city has combined with the county and 6 other cities, so there's 8 agencies altogether, and together they form what's called an entitlement jurisdiction, which goes through an annual process of taking the HUD money and deciding how it is to be distributed and what projects it's good to go for. Just an example of this annual process, Vicki Parker attended the meeting yesterday with the group and managed to get $110,000 for us for this next coming year. So that's kind of an aside, but really another milestone in our participation in this program. So we have that one, which we're looking to get finalize an agreement for, and then we have 4 other ones that we already have agreements for. This project before you tonight combines 3 of those together, and the reason we do that is for efficiencies in administering these projects. If you have a $20,000 project or a $350,000 project, the legwork, the staff time to administer all the requirements is the same, so we might as well pull them all together into one project. Now, it's important to note, though, that the budgets have to be kept separate. So if anyone's doing the math here and adding up the grants and adding up the total project budget and saying, hey, how does that end up with the budget appropriation of $85,000, that's the reason it doesn't quite add up, because we cannot take surpluses in the grants in one project and apply it to a deficit of another. They have to be taken individually. Okay, so the projects that end up before us go through a process of a number of different processes. It could be the 2013 Bike Ped Master Plan. We can take a look through there and take a look at anything in there that are architectural barriers to mobility, people getting around town by bike or by foot, and whatever's at the top of that list is a good candidate for this program, as well as just staff listening to the community and observing around the community what areas could be improved. And so we keep an ongoing list, and that some of the times those projects get on this list. Okay, so we went ahead. The NEPA environmental document was completed late last year, and we led a design contract in December and January and February. Late December and January, this project was designed, and we put it out to bid, and we opened bids on the LEAP Day, February 29th. I'd like to go ahead and just briefly go through the project plans, not in any great detail, but just to give us all sort of a bearing as to what they're about. So we have three projects, rolled into one. The first one is the Wilford Gravenstein area neighborhood, where there's 33 ramps that we're looking to upgrade, as well as 29 feet of sidewalk to replace. So this is in the category of the architectural barriers. It just makes it easier for people to get around, and those with disabilities. So this is removing the architectural barriers category. And as you can see, these ramps are at the street corners at intersections, and there's a section of sidewalk. I got a call, I think, my first week here complaining about a sidewalk, and so that was in this neighborhood, and that's on the list. It's helpful to think about these as each one's a sheet. This is sheet 1, sheet 2, and each sheet has a front side and a back side. So that was sheet 2. Now if we go to sheet 3, we're now with the second project, which is a School Street pathway. And so as you come around out of the tunnel, there's a sidewalk, and then it gets to Clifford Street. And so we're taking this project, which is ultimately to go to Thomas Page Academy, in chunks. Again, because the funding's limited, we can only do a piece at a time. So in a prior year's budget or program, we used money for doing the topography, the surveying along the entire route. So now we're coming through and doing the design in one piece at a time. So the front side of sheet 3 kind of shows existing conditions, and you go to the back side of that page, and we can see the sidewalk section that's going in there, and then ramps at the intersection, the corners of that intersection with Clifford. And this is one grant that we have about $20,000 we would be leaving on the table. That's what's projected with the grant money. And so it's certainly an option to, through change orders, morph the project a little bit. I mean, this is the core part of the project, but sometimes when something's under construction, there's opportunities or some things we notice. So we have some flexibility there to use some more of that grant money. On sheet 4, the front side, this is the La Plaza West Cotati Avenue area where we're looking to put in sidewalk. Currently, there's the parking that runs right up to the business landscaping, and there's really no place for a pedestrian to navigate through there without bumping into things. So we're looking to put in a raised sidewalk with curb and gutter, and this is being worked out with the business owner, the property owners there. For example, with the veterinary hospital, right now there's no delineation for a sidewalk through there. And so there's a lot of confusion with people sometimes parking on the street, like pretending there's a curb there, and then conflicting with people that are parked on the property. So this is going to straighten that out, and it does sort of something we worked out is the owner did want to have a driveway there, obviously, but leave a piece of his frontage as open as possible. So within our standards, we have a 30-foot driveway that's allowable. So we provided that with our design. So you could still, the sidewalk delineation is still really well marked out, but it's under our standard driveway. So the dashed area is just conforming to the pavement, but it's an ADA compliant 5-foot width sidewalk all the way through there that leads from that Rexall drug sign the classic sign, all the way through to along the frontage of the Dos Amigos restaurant, that whole section to the parking lot. And some of the property owners are very happy with this and have been requesting this for a while. So they're really happy to see it come to fruition. And the La Plaza project is one that we use up all the grant money and then some. So. Okay, so we opened bids on the 29th of February, and we received one bid. And at first glance, that doesn't seem like a good thing, but it was only 5% over the engineer's estimate. And it didn't really hurt the city that much because where it was over were in the two projects that had the grant surplus. So it just dug into that rather than any of the city's budget. So it didn't really have a bad impact to the city financially, so to speak. So the item before you tonight is to consider awarding the construction contract to Vanguard Construction. We have an identified need for a budget appropriation of general fund money in the amount of $85,000 to make this a complete project. And the reason for the amendment is that that money is not in the adopted budget at this time. However, I have spoken with the finance director and administrative director, and that money is available in the unappropriated fund balance for this. And then we're looking at anticipating what the costs are going to be for the construction management contract and any change orders. So we're working in a $10,000 contingency, as well as there was a bid alternate to reconfigure a curb that comes out into the street with a tree. And so with the diagonal parking, it's already in the way today. And so we're looking at including that as part of this project to move that back a few feet to provide some room just for people to back out. And with all of that considered, we would need the $85,000 amendment, the construction contract award, the anticipated construction management, and any needed change orders. We're looking to provide authorization tonight also to the city manager to execute any of those contracts. And that's the end of the presentation. I'd be happy to respond to any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Do we currently have any questions? Councilman Lemon.
We'll appreciate the work on this. It's interesting to see these small CDBG grants over time start to add up, and they make a difference in the community. In particular, spending a few years like this waiting so you can put a project together, I appreciate. I wanted to ask, you mentioned on the Clifford project that we had a small surplus, and there was a rethinking if there was any possibility of investing in slight further betterment. One suggestion that comes to mind that might work for walking, accessibility, safe routes would be lighting in the tunnel. There is lighting there. I don't know if it's the city's. I suspect it might be Caltrans, actually. But it's on at night regularly, but it's not really bright. It's never on during the day. It's a dark, unappealing place. Seeing this as a major connector between the downtown and the west side of Cotati, that would be a good place to put a little bit of money if possible, if we could do something with $20K to improve the lighting situation. Just a suggestion. I would suggest anything that tends to improve that walkway area, although you get into a landscape, which I don't know if that would be covered under this particular type of grant. But if you can do something like that, I'd be supportive of that. Other than that, I think this is, I'm very supportive of it. I note that this does have a small hit on inappropriate general fund balance, but I also note in the report that it mentions we can support this expenditure with the delay of other capital expenses. So basically, we're just going to put a few things back so we can achieve this one project all at once and get it completed.
Correct.
Good. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Harvey.
Yes, my question is also on the Clifford project. Will there be any changes to the guardrails? That corner is a little scary, and I know that I've walked that way before, and that always seems to be a problem, that whole corner. So I wasn't sure if we were making any changes at all to that guard railing to keep people safe walking on that path. I can't really tell from the diagram.
The criteria that they would be looking at is if it's a maintenance improvement where it's taking that existing guardrail and just refreshing it, then that's kind of frowned upon. That's kicked out of the process. But if it's an improvement to it that actually enhances that situation, that would be something I think have a better chance of being eligible. So we can certainly look at making those types of changes.
Yeah, I think that fence there where that duplex is has been crashed into more than once by people not meeting that corner there. So I just worry about us making it more attractive to walk and not having the safeties, there. So if we can kind of make sure that guardrail kind of goes around that corner, if that's possible.
Yeah, we have support design services during construction and the change order mechanism to add to the project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Skilling.
No questions. Thank you.
I don't have any additional questions except for the one on the plaza. When you were talking about the driveway, where you had to go with the 30-foot driveway, was that next to the dental office there?
It's shared between the salon, the hair salon, and the veterinary hospital.
Oh, around the corner, okay.
Yeah, on West Cotati Avenue.
Okay.
So there's an easement, a shared driveway, so it works with our standards.
Okay, so the sidewalk and the curb would just graduate down into the driveway and then graduate back up?
Correct.
Thank you. That was my only question. Thank you. I appreciate the work put into this, and I'm glad that we're looking at efficiencies of scale when we're doing multiple projects, or can kind of move these along. At this point, I will open this up for a public comment. Ms. Alderman.
Use this. How do I use it? I wanted to use the map to show. You're redoing an area that's already done. When School Street has no sidewalk over here, and there's a disabled woman who lives about, 1 or 2 houses down from there. She's the one who needs the sidewalk, and it's not even gone down to her. She has a wheelchair van that comes for her every day, 2 times a day, and takes her back and forth to a program. And since it's the ADA, that would be something you could look into. The other thing is my transit bus has trouble going down Clifford. Clifford doesn't have any sidewalks either, and there's cars parked on each side, and this seems to be cut out maybe 1 or 2 parking places, but not a lot. There's already a parking problem, so it just doesn't make sense to redo the same area and not go down, especially West School, where there's no improvements. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Mr. Barrich.
Whenever a city has a public works project that goes out to bid to private companies, and you only get, on a significant public works project like this, and you only get 1 bid from a contractor, that should throw up a huge alarm to most cities and responsible city councils. When you get 1 bid you need to stop the process and you need to ask some questions. Now, Craig has been very good in saying, hey, we got one bid. But your responsibility is to say why. Why aren't we getting more competitive bids? What's going on in the economy? Is the economy doing so great that the construction companies don't want to bid in Cotati? What's going on? Well, I'll tell you what I think's going on, because I'm in the building trades. I have a hunch that Cotati's reputation is so bad, your inability to work well with contractors and other businesses is so tarnished over the years from the antics of people like Marcia Sue Ludwig and Diane Thompson, Dennis Dortch, and a host of other people in this town who've made it nearly impossible to work well with the city. I have a hunch that that's a problem that keeps haunting Cotati. We have a bad reputation in the county as being the most difficult city to work with. And a lot of contractors and businesses avoid Cotati like the plague. All your efforts for economic development have been thwarted by heavy-handed city staff members who are difficult to work with. I hear this time and time again. I try to make excuses. I try to make people understand, to give the city another shot, but we need to stop and look and see what's going on. Why did we only get one bid? In fact, you have a responsibility to stop. Right when these types of things happen, stop, ask questions, maybe put this project on hold for another 30 days, and go out and try to solicit competitive bids with public money. You have that responsibility. Now, I know when I talk about responsibility in government, your eyes just kind of glass over. I understand that. But it's not too late. I'm asking you that this, public monies and these grants don't come around easily. People work hard for their tax dollars. We need to get as much construction and the best value that we can for the money. And this isn't the first time that Cotati's only gotten one bid for a public works project. But I would ask you to stop, use caution, work with the city engineer and the city staff to do better, raise the bar.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address this? Hi.
Norman Cease. Had a couple quick questions, and I share Mr. Barich's concern with only one bid. I'm not familiar with the city-type municipal contracts, but that would concern me. Come from a federal aspect, and one bid would, like you said, sound alarms. So if there's any way we can perhaps send that out for another bid, I don't know the process that well, but that would be a concern I would have. You mentioned that, secondly, there's a $85K appropriation from the fund, which we'd have to basically backlist some other projects. Is that what I heard correctly? Is that what it was? Do we have an idea what would be backlisted if we use that money now? Has that been looked at all? That would be a concern that I would have too. But overall, I'm very pleased to see that, especially the West Cotati and La Plaza area, getting improved. I think that's good for business. As a citizen here, I think that kind of looks a little shabby right now, and I'm pleased to see that as an improvement. And thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else wish to address this item in public comment? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. I will make a couple of comments regarding that. I did raise the question with our city staff regarding the number of bidders, and many of the contractors don't want to bid on this small of a job because many of the other cities are in the process of restoring and repairing and upgrading their cities through years of financial downturn. And so a lot of the companies don't want to pull off big jobs or don't want to compete on the smaller jobs and then have their people tied up if another opportunity comes available. So we did look into why that and asked that specific question on the one bid. So that's all I want to address, unless the council wants to address that. Councilman Lamon?
Yeah, a question for staff. I would agree, having a son-in-law who's a contractor, it's clear that the economy, right now, at least for contractors, is moving out. So there's no question about that. So I can understand that part. But the other thing I thought I heard, I wanted to tease out, because this might help some of the other concerns too. Did I hear correctly that although there was one bid, it came in rather low at 5% over the engineer's estimate? That strikes me. Usually if I hear a business has claims, usually it's probably more, but if they claim only a 6% markup, that's pretty small. What typically sort of bid range above an engineer's estimate would you see? I would imagine it would usually be above that, I'm guessing. Obviously, there's a range, but that sounds rather low to me.
Well, 5.5% is something to be pleased about. That's trending pretty well with the engineer's cost estimate.
Okay.
And so that is a check, and the check and balances you do in the bidding process, that gets a check mark, like, okay. I mean, we'd hope that it's within plus or minus, that 10% gets a little bit high.
Yeah.
And so we have to ask ourselves, what are we looking to achieve by rebidding it? Because it's a costly process to put it out for a bid.
And I would imagine if that first bid, it came in higher, for example, closer to that 10% range, then it may well be, even if the time is costly and problematic, it may well be worth doing that. But if you've got what appears to be a good bid and a responsive bidder, I could see that. One just last thing on what we asked about, and I believe one of the members of the public asked about this. We will be setting back a couple of projects to be able to pay for this. Do we have an idea of roughly what we'll set aside or the type of project? I would imagine these are things that aren't problematic in terms of being set back in time a little bit. But can you give us any more detail on that? Because that is a fair question.
It's a matter of delaying a few projects that are planned and to push them off into the next fiscal year. And it's it becomes a cash flow management issue.
I'm taking it this would be nothing that's time crucial then?
Correct. It's not canceling any projects. It's just putting off their schedule by a matter of months.
Okay, that's good. That makes sense. Thank you very much.
Vice Mayor Harvey.
Yes, along the same lines of the one bid, did we reach out to the construction firm that's working on the downtown stuff to see if somehow this could be wrapped up in that at all, or is that not something that we would do? I know they're kind of on the same timeline. I wouldn't want to have one impact the other, but it's just a question that I had.
Yeah, the Gateway project, the downtown project, is a federally funded project as well, but through Caltrans, and they're infamous, quite honestly, on not being very flexible to changes. They like to have a project defined, and you stick to that project scope and definition, and it's always taking a risk of becoming ineligible if we add, and this is certainly outside that project area. And there's that, the initial setup to a project defines that area, and then the whole NEPA environmental is done based on that. And so we have to stick very strictly within that, and these are outside those project boundaries.
Okay, I had to ask. And then again, just to reiterate, because it was asked on the delay, the fiscal year is, from July to June. So it really is just a matter of a few months. But I wanted to reiterate, it's not that putting it off for years or anything, whatever it was that was going to happen, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Scummon.
Thank you. And I just wanted to ask, too, with the project on Clifford Street and School Street and all of that, are those further areas, is that something that's going to be improved as we continue to try to work towards improving the whole route to Thomas Page Academy? Are those potential future projects?
Yes, that's correct. Those will be the ones identified there by members of the public, or the next phases of that project. And so we're just limited by funding as to what chunks we can do at a time.
Okay, but the areas that we were pointing out, that one of the public members was pointing out at Clifford and further down School Street, those are potential future improvements that we can make once we have more funding coming in. Is that
primarily to connect the pathway all the way to Thomas Page Academy, and so anything up Clifford is something that right at this point is outside of that scope.
okay? But the further down School Street would be a future project.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I'll add just a couple other things. Just so everyone knows, it's not unusual necessarily when the economy is doing well and a lot of contractors are bound up on big project or tied up on big projects to get one bid. And we've had an example here in the past where we've only had one bid, but in that case, the bid was substantially over the engineer's estimate, and we did rebid it. That's common practice, as Craig mentioned. But when you look at one bid, you consider all the factors, including how the bid came in versus the engineer's estimate. And if it's on track with what you expected it to come in at, then it's not necessarily a red flag. It's just an outcome of the current economic situation where you just have a lot of contractors that are tied up on other jobs and not bidding on smaller jobs like this. And in terms of advertisement, I also wanted to point out that when we do put out public works projects, of course we advertise it in the paper. We also put it on our own website, and we send it to builders exchanges pretty much throughout Northern California. So there's no lack of eyes seeing these contracts and providing people the opportunity to bid on them.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Damien, regarding the engineer's estimate, when it goes out to bid, are they aware of that, or is that something that we kind of keep and see what we get back from them?
Yes, the engineer's estimate is put on the notice to bidders, yes. And in this case, we had, just piggybacking off of what Damien, the city manager, said, about 15 land holders. So we had 15 people considering putting in a bid on this project.
The only other question I might add to that, when we looked at the grant amount we got and then the cost of the project on La Plaza, can you explain a little bit why we may have had a lower grant amount available? Was it due to federal, state allocations, or was a grant request put in several years back where the cost of these things were lower?
So this is several fiscal years ago, so I was a little bit more involved at that time. And the typical process is the Community Development Commission is the local sponsor of the Community Development Block Grant Program. And so they call in all the participating agencies in the county to put forward projects. They have a call for projects every year. And all the agencies get together with their projects, and inevitably all the projects end up costing more than the funding that's available for that particular fiscal year. And then they work out amongst the agencies what the funding distribution will be. And so oftentimes you end up with a little less money than you asked for initially. And in some cases, like a curb ramp project, they're pretty scalable, where you can easily scale it down or scale it up to match the funding that you actually receive. But in a project like this, where you really want a continuous sidewalk around that block, it's really not scalable in that way. So that's how we ended up in the final design and how the costs actually came out. You don't really know.
Right.
But now we know where we stand cost-wise on that project.
Well, and I guess with the additional cost, it allows us to bring it to a point where there's a natural conclusion to that particular project there and not left, 7/8 done.
Right, yeah, you don't want to leave like a 100-foot gap in this.
Right. Okay. Any further questions from council?
I was just going to ask a procedural question. Do we need to have 3 separate motions since there are 3 separate items? No? Okay.
With that, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to make a motion.
Excuse me, Mayor, pardon me. I believe we need to take public comment still. Did we?
We did.
Yeah. If you have a quick question, I'll open up public comment again, Ms. Alderman.
We just did.
I still have problems with the clippers. It's really silly to do the sidewalk. When you come down West County School Hill, people are speeding up and they're trying to slow down and brake. And then you've got the sidewalk right there, and if somebody's, and it's a blind turn too. So you're having the sidewalk there is just going to cause a little bit more people to think they're in safety. There is people that disabled. This is supposed to be sorry, I have to get over here. This is supposed to be a ADA grant too. That people, why isn't this woman, who's only two down, being? You could modify the bid for that. And also there is a whole group home that walks through the tunnel, through Thomas Page School to Isabel, and they have to go down the West School. Why are we spending money on what you already have when there's other areas that are much more dangerous?
Thank you. Now, I will close public comment again.
I would be happy just to really quickly address
Thank you.
that, so
I
there's no
thought-
confusion there.
Thank you.
So as Craig mentioned, in an earlier cycle, or an earlier part of the grant, we mapped out the entire roadway, because a lot of that property is very old, and a lot of the property lines date back to the original land grants. And so it was a long mapping process just to figure out where those property lines were relative to the roadway, as well as any physical obstructions in the right-of-way, including trees and people's retaining walls and drainage ditches and things like that. And so that process occurred earlier, and now we're at the point where we have just a little bit of money remaining to get up to widen the sidewalk and make it ADA compliant up to that corner. And how it crosses the street, not how it crosses Clifford, but how it goes down School Street is a very open-ended question, because there's a lot of things in the way, and a lot of property owners probably with a lot of opinions about how that goes. And that's a whole separate process before we even, go down the road. And so you don't want to go like partly down the road, then run into a tree and decide that you can't cut that tree down, or you can't move a wall or whatever. So it's a natural point to stop at that corner right now. And then in the next cycle that we look at that area, that's when we have the community process where we talk to the neighbors and we figure out what the best way is, both for the neighborhood as well as the pedestrian and the things that are in the way, like trees and walls and ditches and things like that. So it's not, on the face of it, it might be simple just to extend it down a couple properties, but it's not simple at all. There's a lot of things involved there.
Thank you. Bring it back to the council. Any further questions? Vice Mayor Harvey?
Is it a question? Sure.
And Councilmember Lehman can probably speak to this better than I, but in speaking with the folks that I've spoken to out there, there is a lot of concern about what we're going to put out there. And I think that we have to be extremely mindful of that. And we're putting in a sidewalk and making it compliant where there is already a partial sidewalk there. But when we start talking about that whole other area down there, there are a lot of people that want a say in what goes there, and it is not necessarily sidewalk and gutter. So I think we have to be really mindful of that.
Yeah, I think between the city manager and yourself, you've covered it very adequately. This is something that's been talked about for some years, and there's a lot of understandable concern. Very beautiful, very rural place, and I know we both share a concern about maintaining that rural side to the rural parts of Cotati. So nothing hurt by looking and planning and to see what may or may not fit in there. But you don't want to just put a little chunk of sidewalk down there, even though it sounds like a good idea, because you really want to have a process where people get a look at this, see what value they get out of it, and see if it works for their neighborhood. So I hope that answers that. And if there's no other questions, I'd be happy to make a motion here.
I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Wonderful. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we adopt a resolution, number 1, awarding a construction contract for the 2016 sidewalks and access ADA upgrades project to the FPD Vanguard Construction, and 2, authorizing the appropriation of an additional $85,000 from the general fund for the La Plaza sidewalk project, and number 3, authorizing the city manager to execute said contract as well as a construction management agreement, including needed change orders up to the authorized project budget amount.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Let the record reflect it's a 4-0 vote. Thank you. And now we have our mid-year budget review.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I think I'll leave it in this scale, otherwise it would be impossible to read on the screen. But there's also this same table is in the packet as well. So we had talked previously about doing an overview of where we stand mid-year in the general fund and also the water enterprise fund. And the general fund, of course, because that fund is the one that we always are constantly monitoring, and a lot of the general expenditures come out of that fund. And then the water fund, because with the ongoing drought, we're paying very close attention to that as well, and how we're doing through the year. So I was just going to go through some of the categories of revenues and expenditures, and just provide a little background, maybe beyond what was in the staff report. And on the general fund and the revenues, sorry, let me it'd probably help to get on the general fund page here. All right, so the general fund, under revenues, we have several main categories of revenues, including property tax, sales tax, what's called other tax, licenses, permits, and franchise fees, and then other city general fund revenues. So in the category of property tax, we're right now trending a little higher than budget at mid-year. And the reason primarily we think that is trending higher at the moment is because with the final wind down of the redevelopment agency, there was a final distribution of tax to the county, who then distributes it to all the taxing entities. So it goes, to everyone that takes tax, Rancho Adobe, the county, and then we get a portion of that as well. And so obviously we didn't budget for that because we didn't know when that wind down was going to occur, but it happened to occur in the first half of this fiscal year. So we're trending a little higher in property tax. And then in sales tax, we're right about at 50%, so we're pretty much on target. A couple things I will point out going on with sales tax, and it affects property tax as well this year, is there was something called the triple flip that the state put into place in the early 2000s. It was, I think it was Schwarzenegger, issued recovery bonds, fiscal recovery bonds for the state, and then they, in order to fund the debt service on that, they moved some money around with local agencies. They took some of our sales tax from all the cities in the state and paid us back in property tax. So anyway, that's going away as of January 1st of this year, and then we're going to have the final true up at the end of the fiscal year. So we're looking at that whole convoluted process finally going away, and that's something we'll see at the end of the year, as well as every city in the state will see it as well. But that's going on with sales tax, which we'll also touch on property tax a little bit. Another thing in sales tax that we're watching closely is that, as everyone knows, fuel costs have gone down substantially. The price of fuel per gallon has gone down a lot. And so because tax is a percentage of the sale amount, all fuel sales in every city, including Cotati, is trending lower in terms of revenue. So we're watching that closely as well. And then other taxes, that includes property transfer taxes and business license taxes. And it's fairly on target. There's nothing unusual to report there. And licenses, permits, and franchise fees, that shows it at 19%, substantially behind mid-year. And that's just due, or we feel it's just due to the timing of the receipt of revenue sources. They often come in April, May timeframe. And so it's the reason why it shows low is just an artifact of the fact that you have to mid-year pick you pick a mid-year point, which is December 31st, and it just happens to be a point before those types of revenues come in. And other city general fund revenues, that includes things such as building inspection and plan check fees, and they're trending higher than budgeted right now. And then, excuse me 1 second while I figure out how to scroll this thing. Yeah. I'll just go through. Oh, there we go. I was looking for the hand. All right, so in expenditures, City Council, it's significantly below the annual budget, and that has primarily to do with the reserve, or the $30,000 reserve amount available for funding certain activities that were budgeted, such as the chamber last year or those type of things, and it hasn't been allocated at this point, so that's why it trends lower at the moment. The city manager's office is pretty much on track. The one thing that I will say is that we have some certain subscriptions and dues that are larger amounts. They're for citywide functions, but they tend to hit in the first half of the year as opposed to the second half. And so when you look at the year right in the middle, then it just shows it as looking a little higher, but it's basically right where it should be. Admin services, we're showing lower, and that's, again, so like the city manager's office pays some fees up front, and the annual fees up front. Admin services does a lot of their work at the end of the year with the audit process and some of the contract services around that. So it's conversely showing a little lower at the moment. And then legal services, that's just, it's trending lower right now, but that's really just because we have some legal payments that were incurred in the first half of the year, but they're getting paid now, and we're trending on track for that. Non-departmental, I won't really point out anything there. It's pretty much on track. I will say that our insurance costs through REMIF, and this is not anything specific to Cotati, this is just REMIF distributes insurance fees to all of its member agencies. It's just it's a little higher than what was budgeted this year. But it doesn't have overall, it's not having a substantially negative impact because we're still right at 51%. Public information services, the budget amount is pretty small in that department, and the reason why it's so little, been so little expended to date is the primary project out of that is the website redesign project, which we'll talk about later tonight, and so that's showing a low amount of expenditure right now. And then economic development, again, it's just the timing of some contract services that will be incurred in the second half of the fiscal year that aren't showed in the first half of the fiscal year. Community development, that's pretty much on track, a little bit below 50%. Public works is showing low at 34%, and that's primarily due to some salary savings. We had some recruitments that didn't occur until later into the fiscal year, and when we adopted the budget, it's best practice, and of course we budget for a full year for all positions, assuming even if they haven't been recruited yet at the start of the fiscal year, they might be recruited halfway through the fiscal year, but we still budget for the full year. And so we had the Public Works Director come in after the start of the fiscal year, as well as the maintenance worker, and we have a civil engineer budgeted, which hasn't been recruited yet. So all those are salary savings that you're seeing reflected in that department, those combinations of departments. And then police, it's showing a little high just because we had some one-time contract service expenses in the first half of the fiscal year, which made that go a little higher in the first half of the year. And also we have some we had some recruitments in the particularly in dispatch, which while the recruitments are going on, you're down a person, so you're covering shifts, and so you get a little bit of extra overtime. So that's all what we've seen incurred in the first half of the year. And then, real briefly to touch on the other pieces, I will point out under other sources and uses, under the equipment category, what that is about, which is discussed in the staff report as well, is we had what's called the inverter. Basically, it's like a large uninterruptible power supply source for the dispatch area that unexpectedly went up and died on us. And that was a relatively expensive, unexpected expense, as well as we had the air conditioner heater HVAC system behind the Katati room pretty much in the same week decide to explode on us. And then we had a couple heat pumps at City Hall, which are relatively smaller expenses, but all these things have been operating fine for a long period of time, but it just, timing was bad, and it happened to hit in the first half of this fiscal year. So you see a large expense there. And then under transfers from or to other funds, I just wanted to point out that in the budget, we had that almost $3 million transfer that is budgeted but not shown incurred at mid-year, and that's related to the Gateway project and the timing of construction there. So we're going to have construction in the second half of the fiscal year, so you'll see that transfer happen in the second half of the fiscal year. And that wraps up the general fund piece, and I'd be happy to answer any, Norm and I could answer any questions now, or I could move on to the water enterprise, depending on the council's preference.
If we have any questions now, we can probably ask before we get into water enterprise fund. Any?
I have just one.
Vice Mayor Harvey.
Yeah, you mentioned in the staff report about some excess bond revenue of $701,184. And it says this funding is currently not programmed. Will we be addressing that when we do strategic planning? Is that where we will decide what happens with that, since we didn't have or know about that last year?
Right. It was just raised in the staff report as a I guess as a trigger to get you all thinking about it, because when we start talking about strategic planning, it's one-time money, but it
Right.
would be something to throw into the mix of discussions during.
And that's where that'll happen, right?
Yeah.
That's where
Thank you. Norm?
Okay. All right. Yeah. We'll move into the water enterprise. So, water enterprise, I just wanted to point out that the revenue is on track. Charges for services is water revenue. That's the revenue that the city collects for delivering water to our customers, and it's at 54%. And it's on track with what was budgeted, and as I think everyone recalls, it was budgeted lower this year than even the last year. It's actually been trending flat over the last several years to lower. It's flat to down overall because of the ongoing drought. But we've been managing that through looking at capital expenses and deferring things as needed, just to avoid having to, as I think some cities are doing, putting it on the ratepayers to come up with drought funding, whereas we're looking at an approach that establishes the rate structure with our long-term CIP plan that the council adopted, but just moving the timing around on some things so that we don't also impact our customers with drought-related impacts. And so there's not a lot to point out there under revenues other than to say that I think we're on track, and the connection fees are a little lower than budgeted, but we're still anticipating construction in the spring, so I think that might catch up by the end of the fiscal year. And then under expenditures, the one thing that's shown sort of as a percentage at least unusual is that debt payments line. It shows it as 871%. The actual dollar figure itself is pretty small. It's only, relative to the fund, it's only $28,000, which is a pretty small expenditure. But again, that has to do with the timing, and there was an interfund loan that the sewer fund had loaned the water fund for some capital work, and the timing of the debt payments were unanticipated. The way they hit were unanticipated in the budgeting process, and so that's why it's showing as a low budgeted amount, but a dollar amount that's higher than that was budgeted. So it's a timing thing, but the overall impact is very low because of the dollar amount. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions on either one, on either the water fund or the general fund.
Thank you, Damien. We'll start down here. Councilmember Skimmon.
Thanks. I was actually just going to start with a comment, too, that I know you and Norm have been doing a lot of behind-the-scenes work with the software programs and trying to keep it easier to track. So I really appreciate the work that went into getting us a mid-year checkup, because it's great to see what's on track, what might need work. So thank you for putting this all together. And I actually didn't have any questions at the moment, but wanted to make that comment.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Harvey? Councilman Layman? Okay. And then the only thing I might have is for the benefit of the public, if you might get into the loan proceeds, just for clarification for those that may not be familiar with what that is under the revenue portion.
Yes. There was an interfund loan between sewer fund and water fund, wherein sewer loaned some money to the water fund. This loan actually happened back in August of 2015. Money was transferred and the first payment was made by water to sewer in December. So we're seeing that payment.
Thank you.
And I will also add, as way of background, that that whole loan structure was established, I think as everyone up there recalls, because we went out to the private market to look at financing methods, and we found that an interfund loan between the sewer fund and the water fund benefited everybody because it got the sewer fund a higher level of interest earnings than it would have otherwise got by just sitting in the bank account and doing nothing. Mm-hmm. And it got the water fund a better interest rate than you get in the private market. So it was a beneficial loan on both sides, and that's why why the council decided to move forward on that.
Thank you. To echo what Councilmember Skillman said, I think it's great. It's nice to have it concise and clear like that and simplified so that it's easy to understand where we're at, where we're going. So with that in mind, pardon me, with that in mind, I will open up for public comment. Ms. Alderman.
I wanted to say that compared to the previous updates, this is very limited. We've had the individual fund accounts and a big worksheet so that we know what's used in what area, and all there is the totals. There's nothing really we can say other than you can't gather a lot from the totals. Comparatively, this is doesn't tell us anything really other than what projects are where they are, what funds they're in. There's just nothing there. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Barrich.
This report is overly simplistic. Again, it doesn't break down the particulars. It doesn't tell us much of a story. Years ago, these budget reports were 10 times more voluminous than what we see here tonight. The staff report was much more entailed, much more comprehensive. This doesn't really tell us much of anything. We've gone through 4 new financial directors in the last, 5 years. They've all come up with different schemes on how to present this information. This is the most simplistic and the most uninformative process and depiction of our budget I've seen to date. Our water enterprise fund is supposed to be somewhere between, $7 million, $11 million. It's operating capital. I don't see that reflected anywhere here. We see somewhere where we're trending, but we don't really get an overview of the city's general fund, which is approximately $5 $5 million. The enterprise fund, water enterprise fund, somewhere around $10, $11 million. It's not even reflected here. I'm not an accountant, but I remember the old way that we did the accounting, and it was more comprehensive, yet it told a better story of where the city is and where we're going. Last but not least, a common issue that I bring up each and every time of the budget meeting is that this is a false budget because it leaves out anticipated future expenditures, such as capital improvements of building a new city hall, more parks, and so forth. If we're not planning for a new city hall 20 years down the road or 30 years down the road, if we're not putting money aside, this is not a realistic budget. It's a fraudulent budget. We've had even our past police chief, Robert Stewart, come here and tell the council, this building is not safe. This building is in dire need of earthquake retrofit. He didn't want to be in this building in the event that there's an earthquake. We have nothing in the budget for future earthquake retrofitting this building or planning for another city hall somewhere at another location across town or building at this site. As other cities are doing constantly. What, Rohnert Park's thinking about doing a new city hall 5-6 years after they built a new one? We have nothing on the drawing boards right now for a new city hall, nothing for capital improvements. You keep kicking the can down the road. Again, a fraudulent budget.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the mid-year budget review? Public comments? Seeing none, I will close public comment and bring it back to the council. Councilman Lamond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, this gave me exactly the data I needed to see. I certainly don't need to hear a story, but what I want to know is if we're on track for the budgeted amounts we set out earlier in the year. And this is what I wanted to see, and this gave me this without delving into unnecessary or unrelated details. So I'm supportive of that and rather like it. And as far as building new city halls, not terribly interested in copying the idea of building a new one every 5 years like Rohnert Park, but everybody's open to their own idea of what's good use of public funds, so that's how that goes. What I really did want to comment on is I'm very pleased to see the effort at smoothing up the up and down costs of water for the general public. That was a minor comment, but it's really something that should be noted. It's very supportive. I think it's the type of service you want to see in a small community. There is nothing more frustrating, and I understand this both as somebody who's been involved now in water for a few years, but also just as a typical customer, as a ratepayer, as somebody gets the bills every month, to work very diligently and trying to be careful with water and conserve, and then at the end of the year get a bill saying we had to increase our costs, for example, from the water agency because it costs us more. Now that is true, it's logical, but it's still very frustrating. And I think for us to be able to work to try to see if we can smooth those costs over the lean years without having that regular change, I think that's going to be very supportive to the community. So I just wanted to congratulate you for that. Solid budget, well managed, see how the sense of the city being very well managed and moving past some difficult times, and I'm very happy to see that. A lot of smaller things that aren't really noticed as much, but the comprehensive annual financial report is making a move there. I think we're going to get a lot of dividends out, not only for the city, but for the community as well. That's a big update, so I'm pleased with that. And I'm going to close perhaps less seriously, but I'm going to thank the city manager for giving me my favorite quote of the evening, and that was, relatively expensive, unexpected event. I think that is a Don Rumsfeld level, kind of like known unknowns or something. So with your permission, I might use that sometimes, but I appreciate it. A good presentation.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Harvey.
Yes, I appreciate the comments made by Councilmember Lamond about the water. I too agree with you that we do the best that we can to try and keep those rates more even to our customers and not have the spikes that some of our other cities have done to us. I do know that we have capital improvement plans and we have vehicle replacement plans and all of that. The time that we typically go into those is during the strategic planning, and I'm assuming that those will be brought to us at the planning sessions so we can look at those again. And lastly, I am very happy to have these reports. My only hope for next year, I know we just went through the conversion, my only hope for next year would be that we can kind of see these more in the January timeframe, a little bit closer to mid-year. But I'm very happy to finally see, kind of where we're at actually, rather than, a revised midterm, mid-budget. So I'm happy to have the actuals this time. So thank you for all the hard work in getting our new system up and running and being able to provide that. My understanding with the new system is ultimately, when we get through the website and all that, the more details behind what goes into this will ultimately be available on the website for people to look at, right? The details that we go through during the regular budgeting process that get rolled up into this, but we'll get to see those on the website too, right?
Yeah,
I see shaking heads. Yes.
Norm's being shy, but yeah, that's the end goal, is to ultimately make all this information much more accessible to people.
Well, thank you for that, and I'm very happy with this.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Harvey. Councilmember Skillman?
Nothing more to add, thank you.
I don't have a lot to add to that. The budget is available online for the year that goes into much greater detail. This snapshot gives us an idea of where we are in our various funding, where we may be showing and where we may have some deficits, and it kind of keeps us up to date. I look forward to next year. I think we will be closer to our mid-year, so that's encouraging in light of all the staffing issues and systems that we are bringing up to date. So with that, I don't even know that we need any direction, or we just receive and file or mid-year review. Is that correct?
It's just a receive and file. The motion does include a motion directing staff on the residual bond funding, but I think it would actually make more sense to wait until strategic planning and have that discussion there.
Okay. Thank you. So with that, we will move on to item number 7 and the proposals for redesign regarding our city website.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So this item is about our existing city website, which was originally developed 16 years ago, which actually seems kind of mind-boggling to me, but I wasn't sure that they actually had the web back then. But so 16 years ago is when it was first put up, and it was refreshed 10 years ago. And so it's been that way for the last 10 years. As in all things IT, it moves quickly, and in particular with regard to the technology that's used for the website itself and the means to access it. As you all know, most people now are using some form of a mobile device as opposed to a traditional desktop workstation, which is how the older school websites were designed. They're optimized for a desktop type computer. And nowadays, it's any of the above, right? Any type of platform could be accessing your website, and you want to make it accessible both for people with different platforms, but also people that might have some type of seeing or sight disability. So, as outlined in the staff report, the main goals that we were was to make city services information and contact information more accessible to the community and our customers, and make it work with the mobile platforms in use today. And also to make the content more readily updatable by city staff, so you have a more dynamic, living website. Our existing website really has very limited staff ability to update. A lot of it's, you have to go through a web developer to actually update a lot of the website, and so we're not able to update much more except for like the headlines on the homepage. That's about it. And in addition, we're also looking at integrating with the website a variety of newer platforms that we've been working with. The portal, the web portal that we use for the legislative meetings is one example, where it's a third-party hosted website that we provide a entryway to our for our customers, our citizens to get to. And so integrating that into the new website is obviously important, as well as other things like that. With the recreation program, we have a registration portal that's about to go up, and that would be integrated into a new website, as well as financial information that Councilmember Harvey had mentioned earlier, and separately, another item that you looked at earlier tonight, there's the record information system, which at some point will also have a public-facing side so that anybody can search a lot of the city records themselves. And then finally, there's, of course, the ubiquitous social media. And if we start heading down that path, providing a interface on our website for that as well. So I've attached the draft RFP that we intend to send out pending any final comments from tonight. And I'll just point out that the expected budget for redesign is well within our budgeted amount that's already in the adopted fiscal year budget. And in the proposal, we're looking at both the redesign as well as the ongoing operational costs, because all these websites, including our existing one, are hosted and maintained by a third party that's a web developer that has expertise in those areas. So along with the initial redesign cost, there's also an ongoing annual hosting cost. So that's part of the RFP review. And I guess really what we're looking for is any feedback or thoughts on features, functions, content that maybe you don't see in our existing website, or maybe you've seen on some other website somewhere that you thought was pretty good, and you'd like to see something like that integrated into our website. So with that, I'd be happy to take any comments or questions.
Thank you. I'll bring it back to the council. Council members, comment.
I was looking at the RFP that you'd included. I'm guessing that the date you put in there was just a placeholder, because it's already passed for submitting the project.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that was a placeholder date. It hasn't
Okay.
gone out yet.
I had a feeling that was going to be your answer, but I wanted to double check. And then my question was, do we have, do Nixle reports go up on our website, or is that, I know you have to sign up for it, but.
They don't currently, but that's a good social media application example where you could actually have I've seen in other websites where they have where it aggregates all of the organizational social media, whether it's a Nixle or a tweet or whatever. It can aggregate it and display it on a rotating banner, actually on the website, so you don't have to go to those third-party websites and log into them.
That was my only question. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Lemon. Now, knowing Vice Mayor Harvey.
I just have one question. Please tell me that we are going to have much better search capabilities, because I get frustrated myself with the search capabilities. It's sort of in here, but that would be very important, that, to have a new website, you got to be able to search it, because that's not happening today.
Yeah, search the website itself for content.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm shocked. With your background and experience, I thought you may have more, but that's wonderful. So we need some direction on that. I don't have any additional questions on there. I have a concern that we're able to integrate down the road with some of the social media, that we're able to be recognized by some of the other platforms that are out there, and links that'll bring us to places that are functional. So And of course, integrating with our records management information at that, down the road. So with that, I will open it up for public comments. Mr. Barrett?
Would it be too much trouble to ask the city staff to give us that dollar number? It's not easy or convenient for the public to pass around the meeting packet and memorize all the numbers. We're not getting paid for that. But in a staff report, the dollar amount here was conveniently left out. But I would like to say that over the years, since the website was first put online, I believe the city of Cotati has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years for web design, maintenance, upgrades, and so forth, of which we've gotten very little, which is very typical with a lot of government contracts that go out to the outside where they promise the moon. Then there isn't city staff really to monitor the performance that we're getting out of these contracts, and these contractors sit back and they do a bare minimum. They don't do what they promised at the outset when these bids come forward of what these contractors say they're going to do for us. The website has been stagnant for years. When we were promised it was going to be updated this way and that way, and they were charging exorbitant amounts of money and maintenance fees and so forth. And Mrs. Harvey is right. So the search feature is weak. We should be able to go back to the very first podcasts and the earliest recordings if they haven't been dumped or erased by city staff by now. But we should be able to go back and get all that information. It's not as bad. In defense of Cotati, the city's website is not as bad as the Obamacare $2 billion with a B website. But you can see where government sometimes finds itself with contractors promising the moon, providing very little, but demanding payment on time, monthly, in exorbitant amounts. We've seen this with the radio communication systems with the police department, charging exorbitant amounts of money for their communications to be in tandem with the sheriff's department and the CHP and so forth, and then overhauling those systems and throwing them in the garbage and throwing their laptops in the garbage. Keeping up with technology is not easy for a city. Granted, it's not easy. But somebody has to be watching the store. Somebody's got to be holding the feet to the fire of these contractors who promise certain things and they don't deliver. Now we're looking at a major overhaul again, when all along the website should have been updated structurally and features improved as we went along. You got sold a pig in a poke. You got ripped off, in my opinion, and we have to do better.
Thank you. Ms. Haldeman.
I just wanted to say on my Facebook, I get Nixle. I get a lot of those already, telling if there's something with Cotati, there was the thing with the concentration of ticketing and things. They're already there. I don't know if the website really needs to go into the social media because it's already linked. So anyway, thanks.
Thank you. Norm?
Norm Zies, I work in IT federal level, so I'm familiar with the complexities of what you're dealing with. I'd recommend, since we're not really good specialists in writing the requirements for this IT system, it's more than just the website that we see. Like you mentioned, it's the record of information in the background. It's all the aspects, the databases they have to tie into, plus external. What I'd recommend is perhaps instead of trying to write requirements based upon what we know in the room here, perhaps look at a recurring theme where you continually improve the entire IT infrastructure and budget for that. I don't have any clear direction on which way to go. I can perhaps look up some stuff and provide that information because you got cybersecurity that's a big issue now. It's a balance between providing a public record for folks that want to look up stuff, whereas we want to make sure it's the right information so hackers don't get in there and change numbers in the budget and that kind of fun stuff. What I'm saying is if we go to a specific contractor locally, they oftentimes don't provide the resources or the knowledge. So again, I'd look at a recurring annual refresh cycle of some form so we keep up with the ever-changing and ever-accelerating changes in IT. Otherwise, it looks good. Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. Neil?
Yes. Good evening, Council. Neil Hancock. I really appreciate a lot of the stuff that's going on the web, so it's nice to see it actually being more accessible. And, of course, the new minutes, the new portal system, I think, is working very well. I've appreciated that. And being able to make comments on that back to the staff, or back to the Council, should I say. So I do think that there is more capacity to be able to hook into the web as through the email systems. There's a lot of, instead of like the Nixle, to be able to do those systems so that there's a number of ways to get out to people. Nixle hasn't worked for me. I signed off it right in the early days. And the reason was that they just weren't able to provide the ability for me to be able to filter the information coming to me. So they offered one set of stuff for texting, and they offered another set of stuff for emails, and I really wanted to be able to fine-tune it. In other words, I'm prepared to get the visible stuff, but the emergency stuff, but I'm not prepared to actually just take a whole bunch of stuff coming through Nixle at me that I then have to pay attention to with the other 60 emails that are coming through. So I want to be able to put it into something I can look at once a day. So anyway, Nixle, I just saying, hasn't worked for me. I've signed off it. And what I think would work is more of an email system where you can tap into that. It's a very old system behind the scenes. The technology is very simple, where you can sign up for stuff. The Water Board's done it. There's a bunch of other people that have done it. So that sort of, that sort of framework would be actually useful. But I like being able to see more that's going up there, being able to get some of the forms up there, being able to, have more of the records that are out there. It would also be nice to be able to input when one sees things in the town that can then be traceable, so you can make an input, hey, it isn't working for the bicycles on this light. And just to be able to have a point in time where that's been sort of collected. So thank you very much. Yeah, hope it goes well.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment and bring it back to the council. Vice Mayor Harvey.
So one of the questions asked was the cost, and in here, the cost that's said is $15,000, which I'm sure that the gentleman that is also related to the IT field will attest that $15,000 is really just about nothing. So it's not hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's $15,000, which I think is an extremely reasonable cost based upon my knowledge for redesigning that. I do hope that it will have the capabilities to allow staff to do more themselves so that they won't need to always have an IT professional, because we really don't have the resources to have an on-staff IT professional to do that. And I agree with the gentleman that, we should take a periodic look at what's evolving annually. And I, too, am worried about security because, in this day and age, we don't know what people can get into. So things like our budget system, we really don't want people into that. If we have static pages of things where they're able to see but not change them, so we have a, duplicate set, if you will, one for looking at and one for actually working on. So with that, I think that $15,000 is a reasonable amount to redevelop our web page that is 16 years old, which is very ancient in IT times.
Thank you. Councilmember Lemon.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going, even with a slight refurbishment 10 years ago, that is an ancient website, and it held up well despite some creaking here or there. I agree. $15K is within the budgeted amount, prudent to do, and not much for what you're working on. It is the cost of living in a modern world, and mobile particularly is a large part of the future, and you have to be poised to be able to provide that, or you're not providing the service to a large part of your citizens. I'll also point out the mention that we've put tons of money into the computer system in the past in general. where I have seen a lot of money having to be invested has been hardware maintenance over the years, and also network maintenance. And I think a large portion of that was because we tried to be a little too cost-effective and kept an older computer system probably longer than we should have several times. And sometimes the budget requires you to do that, but you pay for it at the end. So in terms of software, at least for a website, I don't think there's been any great money loss in that. And I've heard several times, I heard the suggestion again tonight from Mr. Sees, I believe, about security being an important thing to consider. And Mr. Hancock and I have discussed that a few times. And I think there is a potential for this to become kind of an ongoing budget item that will be looked at with all the integration that will be required, the various hooks for all the types of data we want. Combined with the security, I can see where this is something that will continue to grow and be a large part of the future for us. So that makes absolute sense to me. Very supportive of this work, and thank you for bringing it for us.
Councilmember Skillman?
No, I'm glad we were able to get comments and feedback from everybody and present it to staff tonight, so thank you.
So I would add just one thing on both the equipment replacement and the security. Councilmember Landman was correct that the expenditures, there really haven't been any significant expenditures that I've been aware of for 8 years or more on the website. It's really just been very nominal. The expenditures that occurred were primarily last fiscal year and then to some degree this fiscal year on some of the network hardware, where we had a very old network hardware server system, and we updated that to be more modern for a lot of reasons. Most of all, efficiency, because there was a lot of, as you have older IT systems, they become more maintenance heavy and just harder to maintain, harder to use. And so there was a significant, there was a significant amount of money that was budgeted, and that was spent to upgrade the network to be a modern system. And also we do, obviously we're too small to have our own IT support person. So, what organizations like ours do is they contract with someone that can provide sort of part-time IT support, which is what we do. And we meet with them quarterly, and they have a running diagnostic, and they review all of our servers, all of our systems, and look at, everything top to bottom in terms of usage, storage capacity, viruses, whatever, they look at the entire network. And every quarter we meet and we talk about that, and if there's issues that are coming up, just things that are getting towards the end of their life where they're reaching their capacity and need to be, upgraded or changed. So that process is always ongoing. And they're also involved in the security, the security into the city's systems themselves. That being said, I did obviously take note of the security of the website. So the website would be something that wouldn't be hosted on site within our servers, but you also don't want people to hack into that and deface the website or something, which is a possibility. And for the integration with some of these third-party softwares, they all have their own security protocols, each third-party software system. They all have their own login, their own security process. But they're all very good comments and things that we'll take into consideration for the website.
Thank you. So, on direction, I don't know that you actually need some. You're going to put it out for bid. You were just looking for feedback from the council and the public on what that might look like.
Correct. Yeah, just feedback.
Okay. I'm curious what the bids will come back at. So if they come back at 15 or less, I'll be thrilled. Because we know how some of those contractors are.
Yes.
And we currently have no correspondence or pending legislation. So now we'll go on to our city manager's report.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So I'll try to make it brief. So first, I wanted just to tell you that as you know, the urban growth boundary is an issue that we're looking at for this year. And just as a way of background, the urban growth boundary was voted into place by Cotati residents in 1998, and it'll sunset in 2018. And the recently adopted general plan includes an action item to bring the UGB to the council for action prior to this pending sunset date. Last night, a meeting of the Planning Commission initiated public discussions on placement timing and other issues related to a potential ballot measure this November. And a number of important public comments were heard, and a synopsis of the Commission's discussion and recommendations will be coming to the Council for further public discussion and direction to staff on our next Council meeting on March 22nd. And we invite the public to come and participate in this discussion, and in the meantime, or even after that, if any member of the public has questions, they can also contact the Community Development Department, who's managing this process at 665-3637. I also wanted to let everyone know that the Measure G Oversight Committee will be meeting on March 15th at 7 p.m. And as you all know, in accordance with Measure G, the city established an Independent Citizens Oversight Committee that meets annually, and this is the first annual meeting of that body, to review expenditures for Measure G and help make sure that every penny supports voter-approved priorities. And this committee is comprised of 5 members that are appointed by the City Council in a public process, which has already occurred, as you know. Their involvement will help ensure that funds will continue to be spent responsibly on services provided by the city for purposes that benefit the citizens of Cotati. And the discussion that will happen on March 15th is the fiscal year 14-15 expenditures, which was a partial year. As part of, we started receiving Measure G revenue in that fiscal year, but it's not a full year of revenue. So that's the first fiscal year that we'll be discussing. So that's coming up. And then the Climate Action Plan is something that's been kicking around for quite a while now. And this is a countywide climate action plan, and it's a state mandated plan to identify and implement measures to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in order to meet state and regional targets. And it's now actually released for public review, so the public can go take a look at that. And it's the Regional Climate Protection Authority that's leading that effort. So they can go to the SCTA RCPA website, and I believe it's posted there, and find that plan and provide comment. But as I said, it was mandated. It's a state mandated plan. It's required by SB 97, and it's given the fact that projects moving forward are going to have to start analyzing their greenhouse gas impacts. It's nearly impossible for any single project to mitigate what's called cumulative impacts in sort of the environmental parlance. So this plan is an important tool to set up the framework for reducing greenhouse gases regionally, with all the different jurisdictions participating, so all the different county cities and the county itself participating in the drafting of the plan and developing the same tools and goals. So you have a programmatic method to deal with the state-mandated requirements, and you're not trying to do it jurisdiction by jurisdiction, project by project, which would be not only cost prohibitive, I'm not sure it would be entirely possible to do that. So we've been working on it with the RCPA. I say we in the royal sense, because really it's been primarily Vicki, who's been working on it for over a year, and each participating jurisdiction has developed their own plan or chapter within the framework of the larger countywide plan. And we're planning to bring this forward to council later this spring for adoption. But as I stated earlier, it's also posted now at the RCPA website for review if the public want to look at it. I did want to announce that the Floody Pathway project is out to bid. This is the project that includes new perimeter fencing of the Floody Ranch property and the creation of a new pedestrian pathway on the south and west sides of the property, including a picnic area at the corner of El Rancho and School Street. And bids on this project open on March 29th at 3 p.m. And then landscaping project. So the Highway 116 landscaping project, we have a $50,000 grant from the Sonoma County Transportation Authority, and the city has put this project out to bid. And the project includes trees in the tree wells that are out there. This is what's left over from the Central A from the 101 widening project. And as I'm sure everyone is excited about the cones and the grates, but we're going to get trees there soon. We had to go through the council earlier adopted the updated freeway maintenance agreement, which was one of the precursor steps to get the encroachment permit from Caltrans to be able to do the project, as well as the cooperative agreement with SCTA to provide the grant, $50,000 in grant funding, which will also be coming, that co-op agreement will also be coming to council in the near future to take a look at. And like I said, it's the tree wells, the median island on the west side of 101, as well as all the related irrigation and irrigation controls. And bids open on this project on March 15th. And then last Thursday, the City Hall telephone project finally occurred. And so that was a long, complicated project, but we now have a supportable modern phone system throughout the city. So that's good news. And it's also, what's even better news, is that it's cheaper than the system we had before, both in terms of maintenance as well as ongoing operation costs. And it should provide better customer response and easier access for citizens to reach city departments through a variety of kind of newfangled modern tools that allow the phones to be more easily directed to the people that they should go to. So as we refine that, it should provide better service to citizens. And then lastly, I just wanted to say that the City Council rules update that the Council adopted, as you all know, it was tied to the ordinance that was also adopted that same night, and so those rules will be in effect at the next council meeting on March 22nd. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Councilman Lemon?
I almost hate to ask, because I know we're dealing with outside forces that are hard to control, mainly contractors, but do we have a rough idea of timeline for the Folletti pathway, potentially construction and maybe completion?
I think, Craig, correct
that
me if I'm
wrong. That would be with most
here,
of the stars aligning. I guess I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Craig can address that.
Yes, we have bids opening, as Damien mentioned, at the end of this month, and so there's 10 days to get the contract documents in place, and so we'd look to get a notice to proceed going in at the end of April-ish, May, June. We'll probably see those improvements out there late part of June, early part of July.
All right, I'm going to go late July, maybe early August, but I think that's great. Thank you very much. A quick one, I'm very pleased. You can see a lot of things starting to come forward. It's nice to see that the promise of Measure G being fulfilled and all these things that the community's been waiting for. And it's been a long, difficult time, but it's nice to see this all happening. So, nice job. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Harvey? No. Okay. I had a couple of comments there, and then I'll go ahead and open up for public comment, Ms. Alderman. So, we talked a while back in reference to the phone system, and there was a request that I had put in, or a suggestion that I made that I thought might be available regarding voicemail boxes for council members, so that if citizens want to call up, they can call up and leave a voicemail, and then we would get maybe an email notification in our Outlook system. Will that be integrated into that, do you know?
The system as it was put up right now doesn't have council voicemail boxes. It's not to say that it couldn't be added, but we're just focused on getting the basic operations up in all the different departments. But
so it may be something we may look at down the road if there's enough interest, et cetera.
Potentially, yeah.
Okay. And I don't have anything else on the city manager's report. Thank you very much. And with that, I will open it up to public comment. Ms. Alderman.
A couple of things. With the Measure G Citizens Oversight Committee, you actually set up a Citizens Review Committee. It's a lot different than an Oversight Committee. An Oversight has some influence on the future of the monies. A review is passed and there's nothing to change. So that needs to be dealt with. That you legally have not done an Oversight Committee. You did a Review Committee. The other thing is you have been using these rules, the council rules, all year. I was subjected to them since last cut with having the day before. Sorry, I'm tired. The comments, citizen comments are due on Wednesday. This is what I'm hearing. The agenda comes out on Thursday, and then I can't even get them on the web agenda for Monday or Tuesday nights. And I have to, Damien came up with a story that wasn't true. I proved him wrong. Just to get my comments on that were submitted on time. You've done things like the two on the consent calendar, the 2 minutes. And you've been using these rules for 3 months. They're not just starting now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment regarding the city manager's report? Seeing none, I will close public comment. Any other further comments from the council? Okay. With that, we will now go to city council reports. So I'll start with Mr. Lyman, Councilmember Lyman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's see. Let's start with Sonoma Clean Power, and something that everybody's always interested in. I think all of us here at the dais and everyone in the audience and everyone at home, and that's rate setting. Particularly with a surprise we got from PG&E in January with some rather large bills, and everybody got socked with that. We are beginning to talk about looking at rate setting for this coming year. We set rates there once a year. Last year we kept our rates flat and didn't increase them. We're actually looking, given at the huge hit PG&E put on all, not just Sonoma Clean Power, but all CCA customers, we're looking at trying to do something in the range of a 2% drop, and this is all tentative. We have not had a final board meeting. This is just the range of the discussion. But I think that will be helpful for the public and just shows the intention to maintain a competitive price. We'll also be potentially looking at readjusting Evergreen, which is our 100% renewable power mix service that we offer, to match the lower prices that are actually developed for renewables. They have dropped a bit since the last time we set rates last year, and that's good news in a way. That should allow us to drop maybe 1%, or maybe almost a third off that cost, which will make that more attractive, and a lot of value in that too, supporting local renewable. The biggest concern right now, I think, seems to be, or the biggest discussion, I think, point will be, in terms of investment through the budget, will be how much goes into programs. There's suggestions for a large amount for a rather large electric vehicle infrastructure program. Could be something rather big, or a larger contribution to reserves, as we did last time, and that's to be discussed, and we'll see which way we go with that. And let's see, I should mention an interesting thing that you'd be interested to hear. I went down to San Jose last Friday for a Business of Local Energy seminar, basically on this area, on CCAs. And with the new CCAs coming online, Sonoma Power-like businesses, we're looking at San Francisco and San Mateo on the pipeline very quickly, but Sunnyvale, Silicon Valley, San Diego County, LA County, the city of San Diego. Somebody suggested the data shows that if most of these CCAs come online in the next couple of years, we'll have 60% of the customers in the state involved in CCAs. That's a huge change, and that'll be a huge change in terms of hopefully slightly better prices for customers, and also supporting local renewable power a little bit quicker perhaps than we would have with the investor-owned utilities. So interesting thing to share. And just to close out, at Russian River Watershed Association, we've delivered all our letters of support from all the cities for the drug safety ordinance to the county. That's kind of a big thing because it's very hard to get all the cities to agree on something. But everybody agreed on that, and we're very pleased about that. And just happy to close by sharing that Mendocino County, who also sits on RWA with us, as they're part of the watershed, they're interested in doing this too. So we're talking to them, they're seeing what we're doing, and we'll see what steps happen. But this might be something that both counties wind up doing together down the road with a little luck. So that's my report for this meeting.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Harvey.
I have no report this week.
Thank you. Councilmember Scummon.
I also have no report. Retroactively, I can say I attended the mayors and council members dinner on February 11th, since I missed the 22nd and wasn't able to update at that point. But other than that, nothing else to report out.
Thank you. A couple of things that I did attend. I did attend the Public Agency Risk Managers Association Conference, where we talked about the different insurance products that we're involved in through REMIF, and some of the updates that came up there on social media, First Amendment rights, Brown Act issues. I'm pleased to say we are not in violation of the Brown Act. We are in full compliance with that, so that's encouraging. Meeting with our we will be putting out a call for more volunteers on that, but it looks like we're moving forward. We are going to tie the Kids Day this year theme to the National Parks theme, which is theme for the kids.
Are you sure Councilmember DeLasso isn't at that meeting too?
I'm certain, but I'm sure that he will be able to wear his uniform if he likes. But we'll be following up on that and addressing that. So I'm hoping that we are going to put something up on the marquee and maybe the website regarding volunteers for that. I know we've had some honorary mayors. We had a concern over the date on there because the second Saturday in July was just a few days after the 4th of July. So we kind of bantered back and forth on that, but I think we're going to stick with the second Saturday and just hopefully we'll have a good attendance. So I think that's tentatively scheduled for July 9th. And, of course, we'd love to see all of our council and staff available and participating. And with that, I don't have anything further, so I think we will adjourn the meeting at 9:12. Thank you.